You are now tuned in to the Last of Its Kind podcast, produced by humans, made for humans.
Yo, check this out. We connect the streets.
Let's do it,
Yeah, baby.
This is Mike Johns, bringing it to you live each and every week. Yo, check this out. And with us today, we got a special guest. This is the CEO, Jim Dukhovny, who's the CEO of Alef. We're talking about planes, trains, no, bump that. We're talking flying cars. How are you doing today, Jim?
Thanks, Mike. Good. How are you?
Very good, man. I'm happy for you taking time out of your busy day to join us on the subject matter of flying cars. And I think of science fiction is becoming more and more science fact. How did you even get into flying cars?
Sure. So first of all, we have 4 founders. It's myself and 3 other founders. I'm the only non-technical founder. So technically it's my 3 co-founders, Konstantin, Oleg, and Pavel, who actually built the flying car. I'm just the guy who came up with an idea on a napkin, but they actually built the thing. My idea came from my father, Leonid Dukhovny. He was a famous singer-songwriter. At the same time, he was a pretty well-known engineer, inventor. Some of his inventions were used in spaceships. And he loved science fiction. So the combination of the 3 of the creative side, him being the singer-songwriter, the engineering, very hard engineering side, him being the engineer and inventor, and the love of the science fiction, I think that's where the idea came from. But this is just an idea. Putting it into the actual reality, that's what my 3 co-founders, Oleg, Konstantin, and Pavel, did.
Wow. Now, I'll just get into the business of flying cars because that's really important. And then we'll go back into like how you start, the journey that you and how you got here. I want to dive into all of that. So my first question, how would the widespread adoption of flying cars impact urban planning and infrastructure development?
Right. So first thing to notice here, you're not going to have thousands of flying cars tomorrow in Los Angeles, San Francisco, or anywhere else. That's not going to happen.
Okay.
That is an incredibly gradual, small process. You may see 1 or 2. You may not even notice them. It's a very gradual process, both from the business side, from the regulatory side, and from the infrastructure side, as you correctly pointed out. Some people confuse the flying taxis and flying cars. You might have heard of eVTOLs or flying taxis, like
Yes.
Joby, Archer, and so on, that trying to become ubiquitous now. They do require exactly what you said, and that's one of the issues with the eVTOLs. They require a new vast infrastructure. Helipads everywhere or airports, people to operate that, maintenance infrastructure, all of that needs to be in place. And as you assume, all of this is very expensive, and that cost will be probably passed to the consumer, which means they will be initially inherently expensive. Now, the flying cars, at least the ones we do, is a little bit different. As you correctly pointed out, the original idea was, the blueprint was in science fiction, as we saw in all the movies and all the books, right? Surprisingly enough, most of the flying cars in books, movies, and everything else look surprisingly the same, and especially the operation of them. Right. So we're trying to get as close to that as possible. Now, here's the catch. For a regular flying car, as you would assume, the something which looks like a car, which you would not be able to distinguish from a regular car, which has a vertical takeoff, you do not need any new infrastructure at all. 0. It works in existing infrastructure. This is why it has a chance for a quicker and more ubiquitous go-to-market.
That's what I'm talking about, baby. No hassles.
Okay, so I want you to do a deep dive on the difference between the flying car and the taxi. Because it sounds more like, is one more consumer-based? Like, would the flying car be, I can go to a car dealership and get a flying car ultimately in the future, or in the taxi being one of a service?
So unfortunately, people started mixing up terms. Let's talk about eVTOL, even though it sounds more like a abbreviation. I hate abbreviations, so it's electrical vertical takeoff and landing. Let's talk about eVTOLs versus flying cars. Imagine this. Imagine this. eVTOL is a regular helicopter. It looks like a helicopter. It functions exactly as a helicopter with wings extended. So imagine a regular helicopter, how it looks like, and add to the regular helicopter's wings. This is close to how eVTOLs look like. Yeah, the simplest thing, imagine either airplane and you put propellers on the wings.
Yeah.
This is how they look like. Or imagine a helicopter and you extend it with wings also, right? Now, those are eVTOLs. They operate as the helicopter. They look like a helicopter. They require infrastructure as a helicopter. All it is, it's an electrical helicopter.
Church.
Think about Tesla, how Tesla looks like, how Tesla functions, that you put it in your garage, you buy it at the car dealership, as you correctly pointed out. It's a regular car. There is zero difference between the Alef electric car and any regular EV like Tesla. Zero. In addition to being a regular EV electric car, it has an ability to vertically take off in the air and fly forward.
That is incredible.
And that is the difference. It differs how they look like, what infrastructure they use, how they function, the business model. Almost everything about them is different except one thing. The mode of propulsion, the mode of vertically take off and flying forward is the same. Otherwise, everything is different.
You have a point there. But do you have an answer?
Well, and that's why I wanted to look this up, because I have friends in Dubai that were actually working on what they call human flying drones, where you could actually sit in there and you're driving the drone. It looks like a drone at least. And so there's I want clarity between that, which is the drones, the taxi, and the flying car, right? One company, I think they're selling, what is this brand that's doing the human flying drone? And it's funny, maybe it just takes the name drone because it actually it looks like a helicopter, but you'd see it right there on YouTube. And they're retailing it over at just under $500,000, the human drones.
So what's the name of the company?
It's a Russian-based company, Alef. They've been featured at CES. They've come to CES. I've actually tried it. HEXA Lift. It's a single-seat drone that anyone can
Right. So there are several companies. I think the one you're referring to. So there were Hoverbike. There was Xpeng.
Yeah.
Xpeng, the one was in CES.
Alef. You can fly like a drone, fly in this one-seater drone for about an hour at a time.
Correct. So drone would be incorrect term, doesn't matter what, because drone, well, there's no such term. There's term UAV, unmanned aerial aircraft.
Yeah, that's a technical term. I'm familiar.
Correct. Because it's not unmanned, it's not a drone anymore. It's not UAV, correct? UAV is unmanned aerial aircraft, and it's not unmanned anymore. So it's manned. This is why it's not a correct term. Human drone, not correct term. Doesn't matter what media writes it. Flying taxi refers actually not to the mode, because we had flying taxis in 70s and 80s. They were helicopters. Taxi is the business model, right? It's the same thing. Like you hail a taxi comes to you, you take a trip somewhere and so on. So you can have flying taxis being the helicopters or airplanes. We had them in Bay Area in the 70s or 80s, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere there, right? So this term not referring to the technology, it refers to the usage.
Good point.
eVTOL would be a correct term for electrical vertical takeoff and landing, those electric helicopters, as I call them. That would be correct term, right? There are other types of vehicles. For example, there are cars with expandable wings. Let's, for example, Aeromobile, Terrafugia was there, and so on, right? Those are, I'm not even sure how to call them. They basically the cars. They have like a wings on them, but you need a runway on an airport to take off, which makes them almost useless as far as the business model. Right?
Got it. Well, I get the different distinctions, but one of the things that I'm really excited about is that it seems like government has really been pushing for flying vehicles of all sorts. We also have on a local level, local governments such as New York City Mayor Eric Adams and his embracement of flying vehicles, whether you call it taxis, flying cars, what have you. He's at leading charge in bringing that city into the 21st century. Mayor Bass also doing the same thing in this embracement. So I'd love to, my next question to you would be, what are some of the regulatory plays that are in place to make this a safe business, for one?
Right. So the reason they're embracing it, and if I'm not mistaken, actually the former mayor of LA now working for one of the eVTOL companies. So yes, there are several reasons they're embracing this technology. By the way, they're embracing eVTOLs, not flying taxis, but we'll get there in a second. So the reason they're embracing it is because it's a green technology. You're creating a green aviation. Most of this technology is 100% electric. And I can get on the reason why for that. It's actually a technical reason. They're embracing it because it creates a clean energy transportation. That's number one. Number two, especially in LA, in New York, if you've been driving there, you know what a horrible traffic there is there.
My goodness, yeah, of course.
That horrible traffic is not only bad to me and you when we drive there. It's also very bad to the city because city spends huge amount of budget on this traffic. It loses huge amount of work hours regulating that, making it less. There's a huge amount of money going on into this traffic. And this is what these vehicles, this is what's called urban aviation, is supposed to alleviate. That's the whole point.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you. How can flying cars address environmental challenges posed by traditional ground vehicles, like air pollution, greenhouse gas emissions?
Right. So my favorite thing is like explanation goes like this. I will explain about our car, specifically our flying car, but eVTOLs maybe a little bit apply to that too. So 98% of Americans actually drive gasoline cars or anything other than EV. Drives 100% electric vehicles.
Only 2%.
Now, right. So the question is why? There's actually one word with a dash in between answer to that. Why, if you give to an average American a choice between an EV and a gasoline car, 98% will choose gasoline car.
Learning curve.
Exactly. So the answer for that is very simple. It's actually value proposition. The current EVs, the infrastructure maybe not there. It takes a long time to charge. They're expensive. There are many things. But like if you summarize with one word, it's a value proposition. This is where we come in as Alef flying car. We give you a better value proposition than your Toyota Corolla or whatever you drive today. Because we can always get you there, well, not always, but in most cases, we can get you there faster, safer, and easier. You don't have to stand in traffic. You're not bound by anything. You're not going to miss getting to work. You're not going to miss going to your child's graduation or anything like that. You will always get there on time and way quicker, right? So the value proposition is much bigger. It just happened to be that we are 100% electric. And this is the way to get 98% of Americans to use electric cars.
So let's say that you're an electric flying car.
Correct.
How safe is that for the American people?
Sure. So let's get to safety part.
Delta Airlines, American Airlines, they're not really rolling out the electric planes just yet. So that already is going to be another learning curve where you want me to get in this vehicle that's electric versus how I typically know vehicles to work. I mean, how are you going to convince people? Of course, there's early adapters, mid, late adapters, but obviously the lion's share is going to be the late adapters who I'm not getting on that, right? Talk to me.
Right. So let's talk about specifically our car. I'm not talking eVTOLs now. I'm talking about specifically our Alef car, right?
This is your moment to shine. Hello.
So first of all, as far as the human adoption, that's the easiest question. In San Francisco, where I live in Bay Area, but in San
Yeah.
Francisco, as you know, there are many self-driving cars, like Waymos all over the place. The
Yes.
usual experience, if you ever experience that, the
Yes.
first time you're like taking your cell phone, you're putting it around. The second time maybe you do. The third time you don't even notice there is no driver there.
Right.
So it's a very fast adoption as far as the human. Now let's talk about the safety, which is probably one of the most interesting questions here.
And remember, that's on the ground, amigo. That's on the ground. Let's talk
Now,
about being in the sky.
I'm going to tell you something which you're not going to believe. The fact that you're in the air makes you safer than the car on the ground. It's actually safer. Let me explain why Alef car is safer than a car on the ground, and then why it's safer than a traditional aircraft.
Okay.
Let me make the first one, which is simpler. So on the ground, I mean, the whole reason why you're kind of afraid of this, right? You're afraid of accidents. Most accidents happen how? Two or more vehicles trying to occupy the same space and they bump into each other, correct?
Correct.
What is the most damage which happens to the accidents in the car? It's actually not you hitting this car, even though there is some damage. It's you hitting the curb, or you're hitting a tree, or you're hitting something secondary. There are several problems here. A, vehicles trying to occupy the same space, they're hitting something secondary. You bound by the road, which is initial problem we're trying to solve. You have a physical bound, physical restraining bound, and this is why you have all the accidents, because if you had like all the free space, the number of accidents would be much less. Now, let's put it in the air. Not only you don't have bounds and you have way more room to maneuver, bumping into somebody else, it's also not a big issue because you can then continue flying. Now, here's something in our particular vehicle. Not only it has a lot of redundancy, I can separately talk about all the equipment which we have, but we have something called ballistic parachute, which can deploy at any kind of distance for the whole vehicle. You have more time to recover. Let's say we did not even have ballistic parachute. The fact that you bump into somebody else in the air, you're still okay. You have so many systems to recover even before the ballistic parachute puts there. That this time
I want you to explain the ballistic parachute. That's I'm sure you're sitting in a seat, something happens.
No. It's something much more simpler. It's basically because our car, it has to be, most of it made a specific carbon fiber layout impregnated with other light materials. It's incredibly light. It's a very light car, which is good, by the way. It's actually stronger than your regular car, but lighter.
Right.
Now, what happens is we can put the full vehicle parachute. So let's say you're in your seat, even if like propeller goes bad or engine goes bad, you have actually 8 completely separate, independent, it's called DEP, distributed electric propulsion systems, and system redundancy too. But let's say you bump into something else or something goes wrong.
Yeah.
You sit in your seat, you do nothing. The ballistics work, the ballistic parachute shoots up, and you land very, very slowly. You as a driver do nothing, absolutely nothing. Doesn't matter how bad of an impact you're going to have. Doesn't matter of how bad of the failure you're going to have. The last resort is this ballistic parachute. But what I'm trying to actually convince before that the probability of you getting to that scenario is much smaller than almost any scenario of you driving or you're flying because of the redundancy.
Gotcha.
There is redundancy which aviation have not seen, and actually driving have not seen. We're at least 8 to 16x more redundant than anything which used to fly before 5 years ago.
Got it. Well, that leads me to this. I want to ask about, you noted that when this ultimately rolls out, year one, it's not going to be like, to your point, calling me out, where sci-fi movies have a lot of cars just traveling in the sky. It won't be like that. You probably won't even notice, as you said. So that'll be pretty small. So year one, which are we looking at flying cars to actually come to fruition, say 2025?
Maybe that's a good estimate. Probably end of 2025.
And then probably what is your take to see by the time the Olympics hit LA? Where do you see your company in position?
I don't think anybody will allow you to fly in LA maybe somewhere on the outskirts, like 5 feet up in the air. Nobody allow you to that right now.
There's already a buzz that the flying car would be in operations to cater to the Olympics. You don't agree with that?
No, there will be ones. So now we're talking about
So then the scale of that,
engineering.
the
Yes.
flying taxi or car, the scale of that, that's what I wanted to chime in on, is the fact that you think that you said that there will probably be maybe 10 that, you probably wouldn't even notice this. So that first early adoption, they're probably paying are they paying a hefty fee to be a part of this?
So first of all, I don't think there will be, if there will be something, there will be maybe like a one just exhibition traveling. You're not going to have guests traveling in flying cars. That's not going to happen ever. Sorry, not ever, but like for this LA Olympics, there's zero chance of that happening. Zero, right? It's maybe one or two just for exhibition. That may happen. That definitely may happen. If that happen, it needs to go through a huge regulatory things, and I don't think it will be money issue. It would be more of a political safety issue. If they would want to show that technology, that particular technology, because it's a green technology and so on, that may be a very good time to show it on the international stage, like a show, like a show.
And that leads me to this. There's a lot of investments going on in the flying car space, right? Would you say that's because of the green economy that it presents, or what's the hype around why there's a lot of investors, and one of them being Tim Draper, who we know so well? Could you elaborate on that?
Sure. So let me first go on why Tim and specifically us, and then I go to everybody else. So the way there are different investor strategies, but one of them is, if that works, what if, right? So as you know, Tim Draper was one of the first, if not the first investor in Tesla, SpaceX, Cruise, Baidu, Skype, Hotmail, and many else, right?
Right.
How does Tim know? Why does Tim invest in something which sounds completely crazy and then it works? Upside. So if what we do will actually work and the way we actually plan, the way we actually present it to Tim, right? I'm not gonna lie to you, it's an uphill battle, right? Like there's many things we have to make work. If we do, that's a $50 trillion industry.
Wow.
We're not talking about $1 billion company. We're talking about $1 trillion company here, right? Now, here's another thing. We're disrupting, at least us, specifically us, we're disrupting multiple markets. We're disrupting the automotive market and the aviation market. Moreover, we're disrupting it in the right way. And again, my favorite word, which I said, like value proposition. Again, if it works, if we roll out exactly what we said and so on, the value proposition of what we roll out is better than anything compatible in the automotive or aviation, which means there is a huge upside and it's growing. People don't understand how it's growing. It's a kind of the same thing as investing in Apple when the guys were still in the garage.
Right.
But knowing the future, right? Here's another thing which people don't realize. It's really non-risky investment at all. We already have engineering. We already know it's flying. It's already driving. It's already flying. People don't understand that we already, as of today, actually in some cases in the United States, but in Canada, UK, Italy, several Asian countries and so on, we can legally fly today without any certification, our specific car, today. So people don't understand that how close we are to that, and that it's close, not, as you said, 25, 26, 27. It's now. It's now, actually. It's actually right now.
Well, that leads me, how might investments in flying car technologies contribute to shaping the future of transportation, the infrastructure, positioning investors at the forefront of this revolutionary shift?
So you mentioned some aviation companies. They're heavily investing in eVTOL because they want electrification of the aviation, right? So United, American Airlines, and so on.
Well, let's cut through it. When I look at people like Tim Draper involved, why should other investors of that status also get on the wave and get into this space?
Right. So investors,
like, let's say, a Bob Johnson, other billionaires that are in other spaces. Dr. Michael Roberts, looking at him, what would be your pitch to them to say, this is where you want to play?
Right. So usually investors look at two things, most of the investors. How do they get return on their money? Let's say they invest today, I don't know, $10 million and they want to get $1 billion back, right? This is how investment works. And a second, impact on the world. We are huge in both of those categories because the way it's growing and we already like keep increasing our valuation and so on. Because of the demand, again, something I'm not sure if you saw articles about us. The last year, we were best-selling aircraft in the history of aviation.
Yes.
So the demand is huge. Last year, on the pre-sales, and again, it's comparing apples to oranges, but on the pre-sales, we pre-sold more units than Boeing, Airbus, and most of the aviation industry combined.
Gotta give you your flowers, man.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So this is why we know there is a demand, we know there is an increase. And if, for example, you invest today 10 million, you're easily going to get in a year or two 100 million. Your 10 million become 100 million. Okay. Now, the second part of it is impact. Impact.
Yes.
And this is very important.
This is very important.
What good are you doing for humanity? What good are you doing for humanity investing in this company? So as I was explaining, and I can actually explain that there's actually different arguments. If you want me, I can get into it. We're the greenest motor vehicle in history for commute. There have never anything greener. That's number one. Number two, we save people so much time. We talk about saving environment. We're talking about hungry children and so on. We don't talk enough about time. We have on Earth, I don't know, maybe like 80 years or something like that to live. You spend in a year, you spend a week in traffic every single year. You waste.
Yes.
That's a huge amount.
Especially in LA traffic. Hello.
In LA, you actually spend more than a week. Every week is an average.
Right.
So that is your life. We're talking about like getting ourselves healthier, but you're giving away a week every year of your human life. And that week, it matters to Tim Draper, as a billionaire investor to Tim Draper. It also matters to a maid with 3 children who are trying to get to work, trying to get to feed her children and so on. To her life, that time matters actually even more.
So with that in mind, what can you do with that time? So while you're on a flying car, I'm on one of your vehicles, what can I do with my time? What new economy is now created? Right.
So think about this. Let's take LA. LA is definitely horrible traffic. So let's say your commute today is 1 hour one way and 1 hour back from work, right? That's a typical commute in LA.
Correct.
We can cut it down to 15 minutes each way. Now the question will be what you will do with that time. And moreover, that 15 minutes will not depend on what is going on in LA, on the traffic or anything else. It will always.
So now that I'm in your vehicle, I have access to Wi-Fi. I have access to all the different things that I would do on a plane, correct?
Sure, but you're thinking about autonomous. You're thinking about different things. You're thinking about autonomous, right?
Okay.
We're not planning to be autonomous for a very stupid reason. There is actually no way to certify anything autonomous with a human. Technically, we can't be autonomous. Don't think that you're going to have like a sit there and do your homework while you're flying. That's not going to happen.
That's not going to happen.
You're actually driving.
Okay, you're still going to be driving.
You're holding the wheel. But I'm saving you 45 minutes each way, so I'm saving you 1.5 hours per day.
With AI being such a buzz as we're wrapping up with time, is there any AI integration into this? Why wouldn't it be autonomous so that I could go ahead? I might want to go ahead and knock a bitch. Church. I might want to go ahead and make money, watch something on TV, the sports, while the car is driving by itself. I want that type of convenience. Hello.
Sure. So yes, in fact, technically we can self-fly today. In fact, this is very good for flight testing. So it is already a self-flying car. There's just no way to certify it.
If someone wants to go ahead and try out the car, let's say we got BET Award Weeks coming up end of the month here in LA, how would they go get on a trial?
So first of all, you can go actually on alef.aero or just look up Alef Aeronautics, and you can actually place a pre-order today. The pre-orders are open, so you can actually place a pre-order.
Yeah.
to get in the car. As far as the flying or driving to BET Awards,
To
you can call me and we can arrange something.
So if we want to do something with a couple of celebrities this end of the month to really hype it up, we need to talk.
Talk to me.
It's happening. You know, it's Mike Johns. It's Jim. We got things happening. BET weekend might be something new. Jim, I want to thank you so much for your time. This has been an exciting conversation. I talked about planes, trains, no, bump that. We're talking flying cars. You got next, brother. You got next, bringing the new future in. I want to have you again on our show. I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you so much.
You just finished listening to another episode of Yo, Check This Out, connecting the streets from LA to the world. Follow Yo, Check This Out on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn for the hottest news in tech. Be sure to hit that like button.